She stood in the lobby clutching her daughter's hand, while security guards boxed up the last of their belongings from the maid's quarters. Victoria Chen watched her mother-in-law, Catherine Ashford, descend the marble staircase of the Fifth Avenue penthouse, like a queen dismissing peasants. 5 years, Catherine said, her Chanel perfume arriving before she did. 5 years I've given you a roof over your ungrateful head, and this is how you repay my generosity, by filling my grandson's head with your working-class delusions? 8-year-old Lily pressed closer to Victoria's worn coat. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The same coat Catherine had sneered at last Christmas when she'd suggested Victoria shop somewhere more appropriate than Goodwill. Victoria's throat burned with words she couldn't say. Not with Lily watching. Not when she needed to stay strong. The November wind howled against the floor-to-ceiling windows, 60 stories above Manhattan. Everything Victoria owned now sat in cardboard boxes by the service elevator. 5 years compressed into 8 containers. Photo albums, Lily's school projects, the stuffed rabbit Marcus had won for their daughter at Coney Island 3 months before the heart attack took him. "Please," Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible. "At least let me get Lily's winter uniform. School starts Monday." Catherine's husband, Richard Ashford, appeared from his study, crystal tumbler in hand, even though it was only 10 a.m. His custom suit probably cost more than Victoria had earned in her entire life. As the family's housekeeper, a position Catherine had insisted was temporary, but had lasted 5 years. "School?" Richard laughed, the sound bouncing off imported Italian marble. "You think Lily will continue at Whitmore Academy without us footing the $60,000 annual tuition? You're even more deluded than our son was when he married you." The mention of Marcus sent ice through Victoria's veins. Her husband had been gone for 4 years, killed by an aneurysm at 32, leaving her with a grieving child and nowhere to go. The Ashfords had taken them in, but their charity came with a price that grew steeper every day. "Mummy," Lily tugged on her sleeve, her voice small and confused. "Why is grandmother throwing away my art project?" Victoria knelt in the lobby, pulling her daughter close. Both of them wore the uniforms Catherine had mandated for the help, simple black dresses that made them invisible against the penthouse's opulent backdrop. Lily's art project, a papier-mâché sculpture of her father, lay crumpled in one of Catherine's garbage bags. "We're going on an adventure," Victoria whispered, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Remember how Daddy used to say the bravest people are the ones who smile, even when things are hard?" Lily nodded solemnly, her dark eyes so much like Marcus's wide with trust Victoria didn't deserve. How could she tell her daughter that their adventure was homelessness? That their mother had finally broken after years of being treated like indentured servants? The fight had started that morning in the kitchen. Victoria had been up since 4:30 a.m., preparing breakfast for Richard and Catherine. Eggs Benedict, with hollandaise sauce whisked to exactly 160 degrees, freshly squeezed orange juice, Ethiopian coffee ground to Catherine's precise specifications. She'd already made Lily's lunch, carefully using only the ingredients Catherine allocated for them, while the Ashford's sub-zero refrigerator remained stocked with delicacies flown in from around the world. Lily's backpack sat ready by the service entrance, homework checked, permission slip signed for the field trip Victoria couldn't afford. "Mrs. Ashford," Victoria had said, using the formal address Catherine insisted upon despite being family. "I was hoping to discuss Lily's education. The field trip to the Metropolitan Museum is next week. And you expect me to pay for it?" Catherine had set down her Hermes coffee cup with deliberate precision. "The tuition alone is an act of Christian charity, Victoria. Extracurriculars are not my responsibility. Perhaps if you worked harder, saved more, You could afford these luxuries yourself. I work 16 hours a day, Victoria had said quietly. I haven't had a day off in 2 years. I sleep in a storage room converted into quarters, while you have 7 empty bedrooms. Lily eats leftovers, while you throw away enough food to feed 10 families. The silence that followed had been deafening. How dare you? Catherine's face had flushed that particular shade of crimson that meant Victoria had crossed an unforgivable line. You work 16 hours because you're incompetent. You sleep in the maid's quarters because that's what you are, the maid. My son's unfortunate mistake doesn't entitle you to live like family. Marcus loved me. Victoria's hands had clenched the dish towel. He chose me. That should mean something. Marcus, Catherine had hissed, was a brilliant architect who threw away his future at Ashford Development to marry a waitress with a high school diploma. He died before he could come to his senses and realize his mistake. But I won't make the same error. You're done here. Victoria had made her final stand then. The words she'd swallowed for 5 years, erupting like a dam breaking. Marcus would be ashamed of how you treat his daughter. Your granddaughter, who you won't even look at because her mother isn't from the right bloodline. Your granddaughter who asks me why grandmother doesn't love her. The slap had come fast, Catherine's manicured hand connecting with Victoria's cheek, hard enough to snap her head sideways. The kitchen had spun, and Victoria had tasted blood where her teeth cut her lip. You poisonous little gold digger, Catherine had whispered. Pack your things. You have until noon. That had been 3 hours ago. Now Victoria stood in the lobby of the building, where she'd lived for 5 years but never belonged. Her daughter's entire world reduced to boxes and garbage bags. Get out, Richard said from the top of the stairs. If I see you here in 5 minutes, I'm calling security to have you arrested for trespassing. And don't think about coming back. We've already informed Whitmore that Lily is withdrawn. Can't have her mixing with proper children when she's living like a vagrant. Her things, Victoria pleaded. Please, just let me. Catherine appeared with Lily's winter coat. The good one. The one that actually fit. Oh, you mean this? She opened the incinerator chute and dropped it in. Trash. Just like everything else associated with your pathetic existence. No. Lily broke free from Victoria's arms, racing toward her grandmother. That's mine. Daddy bought me that coat. Catherine looked down at the 8-year-old with such coldness that Lily stopped in her tracks. Your daddy is dead because his heart was as weak as his judgment. Remember that, child. Weakness runs in your blood. Victoria scooped up Lily before she could process the cruelty of those words, holding her tight as the little girl sobbed. The security guards looked away, shame flickering across their professional masks. 5 minutes, Richard repeated, checking his Rolex. Starting now. Victoria looked at the pile of boxes and bags scattered across imported marble that cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. 5 years of their lives compressed into cast-offs. She grabbed what she could: clothes, Lily's school supplies, the photo album of Marcus she'd hidden from Catherine's purges. Her hands shook as she loaded everything into the service elevator, Lily clinging to her side. The building's doorman, Miguel, helped carry boxes when the security guards weren't looking, his eyes conveying the sympathy he couldn't voice. Lo siento, Mrs. Chen, he whispered. This is wrong. Everyone knows it's wrong. Thank you, Miguel. Victoria managed. For everything. Her car, a 15-year-old Toyota Camry with 200,000 miles, sat in the building's underground garage. Marcus had bought it used when they'd first married, proud that he'd saved enough for reliable transportation. Now it was all they had left. Victoria buckled Lily into the back seat and climbed behind the wheel. Her hands trembled as she turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then caught. The fuel gauge read just under a quarter tank. $127 in her checking account. 8-year-old daughter. No home. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. No job. Catherine had made sure of that, calling every reference Victoria might have used, and describing her as incompetent and ungrateful. She drove 3 blocks before pulling into a parking garage and breaking down. The tears came hard and fast, 5 years of swallowed humiliation finally erupting. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was tiny from the back seat. "Are we going to live in the car now?" Victoria gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles ached. How did you tell an 8-year-old that yes, this rusted Toyota with the broken heat and windows that didn't quite seal was now their home? "Just for a little while," she whispered. "Just until Mommy figures things out." But she had no idea how to figure this out. Her parents had died when she was 19, a car accident that left her alone with student loans she'd never finished paying because she'd dropped out to support herself. Marcus's friends had disappeared after his death, unable to reconcile the brilliant architect they'd known with his waitress widow. And Catherine had made sure Victoria had no professional connections, no references, no path forward. The November cold seeped through the car's worn seals. Lily started crying softly, a heartbreaking sound that made Victoria want to scream at the unfairness of it all. "I'm scared," Lily whispered. "I know, baby, I know." Victoria pulled her into the front seat, holding her in the cramped space. "But we have each other, and sometimes that has to be enough." Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, though she recognized Richard's writing style immediately. "The locks have been changed. Any attempt to contact us will be considered harassment and dealt with accordingly. You made your choice." She deleted the message with shaking fingers and held Lily tighter, wondering how she'd survive the night, much less build a future from these ruins. 3 weeks had passed since that November morning. 3 weeks of Victoria learning the invisible geography of poverty, which churches served free breakfast, which libraries offered warmth without questions, which shelters had space for mothers with children. The Toyota had become their universe. Lily's drawings covered the windows, crayon flowers and rainbows that broke Victoria's heart with their optimism. Their few possessions were organized with military precision in the trunk. Lily sang constantly, little made-up songs about princesses who lived in magic cars. They were parked behind a 24-hour laundromat this Tuesday evening, the engine running for heat, rationing the last eighth of a tank. Victoria was dividing a single apple 4 ways: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and tomorrow's breakfast when the knock came on her window. Her heart jumped. Police, child services. She'd become expert at spotting trouble, at moving before questions got asked. But the woman standing outside her driver's window didn't look official. Mid-60s, elegant in a way that spoke of old money rather than new wealth, carrying an expensive leather briefcase and wearing an expression of determined purpose. Victoria cracked the window an inch. "Yes? Victoria Chen?" The woman's voice was cultured, British accent subtle but present. "Formerly Victoria Chen, née Victoria Santos, before marriage." The use of her maiden name made Victoria's stomach clench. No one had called her that in years. "Who's asking?" "My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm a senior partner at Whitmore and Associates, international estate attorneys." She pulled out a business card, holding it where Victoria could see. "I've been trying to locate you for the past 6 months." 6 months? Victoria's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "For what?" "Your great-uncle, Alessandro Santos. I believe you knew him as Uncle Sandro?" Eleanor's expression softened. "He passed away 8 months ago, in his home in Milan. I'm very sorry for your loss." Victoria's breath caught. Uncle Sandro. She hadn't thought about him in years. The eccentric relative who'd sent birthday cards with $50 bills when she was young, who'd worn Armani suits to family barbecues, who disappeared from their lives after her parents died. I remember him, Victoria said quietly, but I haven't heard from him since I was 19. Yes. Well, Eleanor glanced at Lily in the back seat, then at the boxes visible through the car windows. Her expression shifted from professional to concerned. Mrs. Chen, I really must insist. We discuss this somewhere more appropriate. Your daughter looks cold, and what I have to tell you is of significant importance. Lily had woken up, pressing her face against the window. Mummy, who is that? It's okay, sweetheart. Victoria studied Eleanor's card 5th Avenue address. Impressive credentials. What is this about? Your inheritance, Eleanor said simply. Your great-uncle left very specific instructions regarding his estate. Mrs. Chen, I've been searching for you for months. The Ashford family claimed they had no knowledge of your whereabouts when I contacted them. Victoria's blood went cold. 6 months ago, the Ashfords had known about an inheritance before they threw her out. They knew, she whispered. Eleanor's expression turned grim. I suspected as much. They were quite eager to know details of the estate when I explained I was searching for you. When I told them the inheritance was yours alone, they became agitated. I'm afraid I may have inadvertently informed them of its existence, which is why I've been so desperate to find you. How much? The question escaped before Victoria could stop it. Eleanor glanced around the parking garage. Mrs. Chen, your great-uncle, was a very successful man. He built his fortune in international real estate and art acquisition. The total estate value, including his Manhattan penthouse and its contents, is approximately $280 million. The world tilted. Victoria's vision blurred. $280 million. The number didn't seem real. Couldn't be real. That's impossible. I assure you, it's quite real. Eleanor opened her briefcase and pulled out documents. And, Mrs. Chen, the penthouse in question is located at 875 5th Avenue, the building where you were living. Victoria's hands went numb. What? Your great-uncle owned the entire top floor, the 61st floor. He'd been living there quietly for 30 years. The Ashfords, who occupy the 60th floor, never knew. He was very private. You, see, used a different entrance, kept to himself. But the Ashfords own that building. Catherine always said, the Ashfords own the 60th floor and have certain board memberships, Eleanor corrected. But they don't own the building, and they certainly don't own what your great-uncle left you. She pulled out a key, including what's in his personal safe. 30 minutes later, Victoria sat in Eleanor's Park Avenue office, watching Lily play with toys the secretary had found, trying to process words that didn't make sense. Your great-uncle was very specific in his instructions, Eleanor explained, spreading documents across her desk. He'd been tracking your life since your parents died. When you married Marcus Ashford, he was pleased, said you'd found someone who valued you for yourself. When Marcus died, he wanted to intervene, but you never reached out. You never asked for help. I didn't know how to reach him, Victoria said, tears threatening. After my parents died, he just disappeared. He didn't disappear. He was watching, waiting for the right time, when he learned of your circumstances with the Ashford family. Eleanor's expression darkened. He employed investigators. The reports made for difficult reading. Heat flooded Victoria's cheeks. Someone had been documenting her humiliation. He knew about how they treated us? Everything. The maids' quarters, the 16-hour days, the way they treated Lily. He wanted to help, but his health was failing. He knew he didn't have long, so he structured his estate very carefully to ensure you would inherit after his death, but only if certain conditions were met. What conditions? That you were raising a child of your own, that you were in genuine financial need, and that you had demonstrated, in his words, the Santos family strength, the ability to endure hardship without losing your compassion or integrity. Eleanor pulled out a single sheet of paper. The estate has cleared probate. Everything is ready for transfer. But first, you need to see the penthouse. There's something there your great-uncle wanted you to find. Can't you just tell me? I could, but I won't. Alessandro was very specific. You must see it for yourself. Eleanor stood. The building's concierge is expecting us. Shall we go? The drive back to 875 Fifth Avenue felt surreal. Victoria had left this building 3 weeks ago with everything she owned in boxes. Now she was returning in Eleanor's Mercedes, her daughter beside her, to claim an inheritance she'd never imagined. The building's main entrance, not the service entrance Victoria had always used, opened into a lobby of breathtaking opulence. The night concierge looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from professional to warm recognition. "Mrs. Chen," he said, coming around the desk. "I'm Patrick. I've been waiting for you. Mr. Santos spoke of you often. I'm so sorry for your loss. You knew him? For 15 years. He was a kind man, private, but kind." Patrick pulled out a key card. "The 61st floor is ready for you. Everything is exactly as Mr. Santos left it." The private elevator required 2 keys, one that Patrick provided, one that Eleanor held. As they rose past the 60th floor, past the home where Victoria had scrubbed toilets and been told she was worth nothing, Lily pressed her face against the glass. "Mummy, we're going so high." The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and Victoria's breath stopped. Where the Ashfords' home was all cold marble and status symbols, this space was warm, lived in, filled with books and art and memories. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of Central Park, lit up in the night. Persian rugs covered dark hardwood floors. Comfortable furniture invited you to sit and stay. But it was the photographs that made Victoria's legs weak. Everywhere she looked, she saw her family. Her parents on their wedding day. Herself as a baby. Marcus and her, their small wedding. Lily at every age, from birth to recent candid shots that Uncle Sandro must have taken from a distance. "He was always watching," Eleanor said gently. "Always caring, even when you didn't know." Lily ran to a shelf full of toys, expensive dolls and games, still in their packaging. "Mummy, look, these have my name on them." Each toy bore a small tag. For Lily, from Great Uncle Sandro. For her 5th birthday. For her 6th birthday. Years of gifts he'd bought but never sent, waiting for the day when she could receive them properly. "Why didn't he contact us?" Victoria whispered. "Pride," Eleanor admitted. "And pain. When your parents died, there was a family dispute over their estate. Alessandro tried to gain custody of you, but your father's cousin won. He blamed himself for failing you. By the time he realized he could help, you'd disappeared into the Ashford family, and he thought you'd chosen their world over his." Victoria moved through the apartment in a daze. A library full of first editions. A kitchen that had actually been used, unlike the Ashfords' showpiece. Bedrooms decorated for the family Alessandro had hoped would someday fill them. And in the master bedroom, behind a painting of Venice at sunset, was the safe. "He left the combination taped underneath," Eleanor said, handing her a small card. "He wanted you to open it. No one else." Victoria's hands shook as she spun the dial. The safe was larger than she'd expected, not a small wall unit, but a walk-in vault built into the apartment's structure. The door swung open with a soft click. Inside was more than she could process. Stacks of documents, bearer bonds, stock certificates, deeds to properties around the world. But what drew her forward was a small leather box sitting on a shelf at eye level. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter in her great-uncle's handwriting, and beneath it a necklace that made her gasp, a Santos family heirloom she'd seen in photographs, but thought was lost. "My dearest Victoria," the letter began. "By the time you read this, I'll be gone, and you'll be wondering why a relative you barely knew left you everything. The answer is simple. You're the daughter I never had, and Lily is the granddaughter I never got to spoil. I watched from afar as you built a life with Marcus. I was happy for you. When he died, I wanted to help, but my investigators told me you'd been taken in by his family. I thought you were safe. Then I learned the truth. About the maid's quarters, the 16-hour days, the way they treated you and Lily like servants, the way they mocked your poverty while sitting on their inherited wealth. I was furious, not just at them, but at myself for failing to protect you sooner. So, I did what I do best. I planned. This penthouse has been in my name for 30 years. The Ashfords never knew their wealthy neighbor was your family. That ignorance gave me the ability to document everything, to build a case, to ensure they could never hurt you again. The $280 million is yours, all properly documented, legally sound, taxes paid. But more importantly, so is this building. I own 51% of the building's shares through various corporations. The Ashfords never knew. They thought they were the power here. They were wrong. You are now the majority shareholder. You control the building board. You decide who stays and who goes. Use this power wisely, my dear. Don't become what they are, but don't let them hurt you, or Lily, ever again. I'm sorry I waited too long to reach you. I'm sorry I let pride and pain keep me from being the family you deserved. But I hope this inheritance shows you what I couldn't say in life. You were loved. You are worthy. And you will never be powerless again. All my love. Uncle Sandro. Victoria read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor stood quietly by the window, giving her privacy to process. He bought building shares? Victoria, finally, asked. Over 20 years. Very carefully, very discreetly. The Ashfords have no idea. They think they control the building board because they're on it. But the controlling shares, those are yours now. A sound from the doorway made Victoria turn. Lily stood there, holding one of the photographs, a picture of Victoria as a child with Uncle Sandro at a family party, both of them laughing. He looks kind, Lily said, like how Daddy looked in pictures. Victoria pulled her daughter close. He was kind, and he loved us, even when we didn't know. Eleanor cleared her throat gently. Mrs. Chen, I should mention there are some immediate concerns. Your great-uncle left instructions about protecting you from the Ashford family. He anticipated they might try to interfere or claim you'd manipulated him, so he left quite a bit of documentation. Documentation? Video testimony, recorded 3 months before his death, while he was still completely lucid. Financial records showing no contact between you. Private investigator reports documenting how the Ashfords treated you. He built an unassailable case. Eleanor pulled out her phone and showed Victoria a folder. He also left instructions that if the Ashfords had thrown you out before you could receive your inheritance, I was to inform you of certain leverage points. Victoria stared at the folder name, Ashford, Family Insurance. What kind of leverage? Let's just say your great-uncle was very thorough in his investigations. The Ashfords' fortune isn't as clean as they like to pretend. Tax issues, zoning violations, some rather interesting offshore accounts. Nothing criminal, but certainly embarrassing. And all documented with remarkable precision. He was protecting me. He was arming you, Eleanor corrected. The question is, what will you do with these weapons? Victoria looked around the penthouse that was now hers, at the photographs of a family she'd lost and found again, at Lily, playing with toys bought with love by a man who'd watched from the shadows, at the safe full of documents that represented not just wealth, but power. Catherine's voice echoed in her memory. You're not family. You were never family. You're just the maid. What happens now? Victoria asked. Eleanor smiled. Now, Mrs. Chen, you decide. The inheritance is yours. The penthouse is yours. The building shares are yours. How you use them is entirely up to you. Victoria walked to the window, looking down at the city, 61 stories below. 3 weeks ago, she'd been thrown out of this building like garbage. Now she owned it. The irony was almost poetic. Can they evict me from my own building? Victoria asked. No. In fact, you can call a special board meeting as the majority shareholder. You can propose anything you like, including the termination of certain leases that have, shall we say, problematic clauses. Victoria's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on for the first time in days. 17 missed calls. From Catherine. 23 from Richard. Texts flooding in now that her number was active again. She opened the most recent text from Catherine. Victoria, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We're family. Come home. We can work this out. Another from Richard. Don't be rash. Think of Lily's future. We can provide things you can't. And another from Catherine. The building board has expressed concerns about homeless individuals loitering on the property. We'd hate to have to call the authorities. The threat was clear. Even now, even after everything, they were trying to use Lily as leverage. Victoria's hands clenched around her phone. Eleanor, how quickly can we call a board meeting? The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning, 4 days after Victoria learned about her inheritance. In those 4 days, she transformed. Eleanor connected her with the best attorney in New York. Victoria opened new bank accounts, the kind with private bankers who called her Miss Chen with respect. She bought new clothes, not Chanel like Catherine, but quality pieces that made her feel like herself. Most importantly, she spent time with Lily in their new home, explaining carefully that, yes, this was real, yes, they were safe, and no, they'd never be cold or hungry or scared again. On Saturday morning, Victoria dressed carefully in a navy suit Eleanor had helped her select. Simple, professional, powerful. She wore the Santos family necklace diamonds and sapphires that had belonged to her great-grandmother. Lily stayed with Eleanor's sister, who'd agreed to babysit. Victoria had been clear. Her daughter would never witness what was about to happen. Some victories were too cruel for children to see. The board meeting was held in the building's conference room, on the 60th floor, technically part of the Ashford's domain, which made the location even more perfect. Victoria arrived first with Eleanor and her new attorney, David Chen, no relation. But the name coincidence was amusing. They set up at the head of the table, documents spread with careful precision. The board members trickled in wealthy residents who viewed these meetings as social occasions rather than actual governance. They eyed Victoria with curiosity, whispering among themselves, the poor woman who'd been living in the Ashford's maid quarters. What was she doing here? Catherine and Richard arrived last, their entrance calculated for maximum impact. Catherine wore head-to-toe Dior. Richard had his usual crystal tumbler despite the 10 a.m. start time. They stopped dead when they saw Victoria at the head of the table. "What is this?" Catherine demanded. "Who authorized her presence?" "I did," Eleanor said calmly. "As the representative of the majority shareholder." "Majority shareholder," Richard's face reddened. "That's impossible. We hold the largest individual position." "You hold 15%, David said, sliding papers across the table. "Miss Victoria Chen, through the Santos Family Trust, holds 51%. She is now the controlling entity of this building." The silence was absolute. "That's impossible," Catherine whispered. "The 61st floor is owned by her great-uncle Alessandro Santos," Eleanor finished, "who passed away 8 months ago, leaving everything to Victoria, including his building shares, acquired over 20 years through various corporations. All legal, all documented, all now in Miss Chen's control." Victoria watched the color drain from Catherine's face, then rushed back in a flood of red. "You," Catherine started. "Please sit down, Mrs. Ashford," Victoria said quietly. "We have business to discuss." For the first time in 5 years, Catherine Ashford obeyed her. The meeting proceeded with brutal efficiency. Victoria, guided by Eleanor and David, outlined her position as majority shareholder. She proposed several changes to building policy, all perfectly legal, all meticulously planned. First, a review of all current leases, for compliance with building regulations. Several units, David explained, have been in violation of occupancy rules, noise ordinances, and proper registration requirements. As majority shareholder, Miss Chen is concerned about the building's reputation and legal standing. Richard's hands clenched. His unit had been flagged for multiple violations over the years. Nothing serious enough to force action, but documented nonetheless. Second, new income verification requirements for all residents. Given recent IRS scrutiny of high-value properties, Eleanor said smoothly, the building must ensure all residents can document legitimate income sources for their residences. This protects everyone from regulatory issues. Catherine's face went white. Victoria knew why. Uncle Sandro's investigators had discovered certain irregularities in how the Ashfords claimed their residence. For tax purposes, nothing criminal, but embarrassing if examined closely. Third, and most devastating, mandatory disclosure of any resident who employed building staff inappropriately. Specifically, David said, his voice carrying steel, any resident who housed employees in substandard conditions, failed to pay proper wages, or violated labor laws. This is a liability issue for the building. Victoria watched understanding dawn on the Ashfords' faces. The maids' quarters, the 16-hour days, the under-the-table payments. All of it documented, all of it potentially actionable. "You can't do this." Catherine finally found her voice. "We've lived here for 20 years. And you can continue living here," Victoria said calmly, "as long as you comply with all building regulations. Do you anticipate any problems with compliance, Mrs. Ashford?" The other board members were watching now, sensing blood in the water. The Ashfords' arrogance had made them few friends. People were sitting back, enjoying the show. "There's one more item," Victoria continued. "As you know, the 61st floor has been vacant since my great-uncle's death. I'll be taking up residence there with my daughter, effective immediately." "You can't live above us," Richard sputtered. "The noise, the disruption. I promise to be quieter than you are," Victoria said sweetly. "After all, I spent 5 years learning to move through your home without disturbing you. I imagine I can manage the same in my own residence." Catherine pushed back from the table, her composure finally cracking completely. "This is revenge. Petty, vindictive revenge." "No," Victoria said, her voice steady and clear. "Revenge would be releasing to the press the documented violations in your unit. Revenge would be sharing with your society friends exactly how you treated your son's widow and daughter. Revenge would be using the considerable resources I now have to make your lives as miserable as you made ours." She stood, gathering her documents. "This isn't revenge. This is me establishing boundaries. You can live in this building, or you can leave. But you'll do it on my terms now, not yours." "We'll fight this," Catherine said. "We have lawyers." "Better ones than mine?" Victoria asked. "Mrs. Ashford, I own 51% of this building. I have documentation of labor violations, tax irregularities, and zoning issues that would take years and millions of dollars to fight. But more than that, I have no desire to destroy you. I just want you to leave me and my daughter alone." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and, Mrs. Ashford, Lily's tuition at Whitmore Academy has been paid in full. We won't be needing your charity anymore." Eleanor and David followed her out, leaving the board members in stunned silence. In the elevator, Victoria's hands finally started shaking. "Did I do the right thing?" "You set boundaries," Eleanor said firmly. "You protected yourself and Lily. You used your power without abusing it. Your great-uncle would be proud." The elevator rose past the pound 60th floor past the Ashfords' home, where Victoria had scrubbed floors and been told she was nothing, and opened into the penthouse that was now hers. Lily ran to meet her, launching into Victoria's arms. "Mommy, did the meeting go okay?" "It went perfectly, baby." "Are we really staying here? This is really our home." Victoria looked around the penthouse filled with Uncle Sandro's love, at the view of Central Park 61 stories below, at the life they could finally build. "Yes, sweetheart, this is really our home." That night, after Lily was asleep in her new bedroom, decorated with the toys Uncle Sandro had saved for years, Victoria stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked down at the city. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "You've made a terrible mistake. We'll never forgive this." Victoria deleted it, without responding. Forgiveness wasn't what she wanted. She wanted peace. She wanted safety. She wanted her daughter to grow up knowing she was valued. The inheritance had given her more than money. It had given her power not over others, but over her own life. The ability to say no. The freedom to walk away. The strength to demand better. 6 months passed. 6 months of transformation so complete that Victoria sometimes caught her reflection in the windows and didn't recognize the woman staring back. The Ashfords had moved out within a month of the board meeting. Catherine had tried to rally their social circle against Victoria, but Uncle Sandro's careful documentation made that difficult. Word spread quickly in their circles. The widow they'd abused was actually heiress to a fortune, and she had proof of their cruelty. Their friends, ever sensitive to social winds, made their choices accordingly. Victoria threw herself into learning about her inheritance. The Manhattan penthouse was just the beginning. Uncle Sandro had owned properties in Milan, London, Tokyo, Barcelona, a portfolio worth even more than Eleanor had initially estimated. But it was the art collection that took her breath away. Hidden in climate-controlled storage in the building's basement was a treasure trove. Uncle Sandro had been quietly amassing for 40 years. Not famous pieces, he'd been careful about that, but emerging artists who'd later become masters. Historical pieces bought at estate sales. Collections assembled with knowledge and love. "Conservative estimate," Eleanor said during one of their many meetings. "Another $150 million. Possibly more." Victoria had sat down hard. $430 million total. Your great-uncle was very good at what he did. The money was transformative, but it was Uncle Sandro's final gifts that meant the most. Victoria found them scattered throughout the penthouse, letters he'd written but never sent, photographs he'd taken from afar, birthday cards addressed to Lily for years she hadn't known her great-great-uncle existed. One letter, dated a month before his death, made her cry until she couldn't breathe. "Dearest Victoria, I'm writing this, knowing I'll never send it, but needing to say it anyway. I failed you when your parents died. I should have fought harder for custody. Should have been there when you needed family. Should have reached out when Marcus died instead of watching from the shadows like a coward. But here's what I learned watching you from afar. You don't need saving. You never did. You're stronger than anyone who's ever hurt you. More resilient than anyone who's dismissed you. Braver than anyone who's tried to break you. The inheritance I'm leaving isn't to save you. It's to free you. Free you from having to accept cruelty in exchange for shelter. Free you from having to make yourself small so others can feel big. Free you from ever again believing the lies people tell about your worth. You deserve everything, Victoria. Not because you're my family, but because you're you. And that's worth more than all the money in the world. Victoria framed that letter and hung it in her study. She used her inheritance wisely. Lily's education was secured, not just tuition, but trust funds for college and beyond. Victoria went back to school herself, finally finishing the degree she'd abandoned when her parents died. But most importantly, she started the Santos Family Foundation. Its mission: supporting single mothers trying to build lives after loss, providing housing, education, childcare, all the things Victoria had needed and never had. The foundation's office was in the building's ground floor, a not-so-subtle message to the Ashfords and anyone like them. Victoria had turned her pain into purpose, her suffering into service. Eleanor helped structure everything legally. David made sure it was protected from anyone who might try to claim Victoria was mentally incompetent or had manipulated Uncle Sandro. The Ashfords' lawyers tried, but Uncle Sandro's video testimony and documentation made their case collapse within weeks. One afternoon, Victoria was reviewing foundation applications when her assistant knocked. "There's someone here to see you," Sarah said hesitantly. "She doesn't have an appointment." "But it's Catherine Ashford." Victoria's chest tightened. She hadn't seen her mother-in-law since the board meeting. "Send her in." Catherine looked different. Older, smaller, wearing a Talbot suit instead of Chanel. Her perfect silver hair showed roots. Her designer bag was last season's style. "Victoria," she said, her voice lacking its usual steel. "Thank you for seeing me." Victoria gestured to a chair, saying nothing. "I came to apologize," Catherine said, the words clearly difficult. "Not because my lawyer told me to, or because I want something. Because I need to say it." "Go on." "What we did, what I did to you and Lily, was unconscionable. Marcus loved you, and instead of honoring that, I punished you for it. I treated you like a servant when you were family. I threw you out when you needed help. Her voice cracked. "I told your daughter that her father was weak. That weakness ran in her blood." Victoria's hands clenched under the desk, but she kept her expression neutral. "I've lost everything," Catherine continued. "Not the money Richard's investments recovered, but our reputation, our friends, our standing. Everyone knows now how we treated you, and I deserve all of it. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm dying." Catherine said it flatly. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6 months, maybe less. And before I go, I needed you to know that you won. Not the inheritance, not the building you won by being everything I wasn't. Kind when I was cruel. Strong when I was weak. A real mother to Lily when I failed Marcus." Victoria felt something twist in her chest. Not sympathy. Catherine didn't deserve that. But something complicated. The kind of messy emotion that came with seeing your tormentor brought low. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that Marcus was right. You were always too good for us." Catherine stood, steadying herself against the chair. "Lily is lucky to have you as her mother. I wish I'd been wise enough to see that before it was too late." She walked to the door, then paused. "The toy, the one I threw in the incinerator. Marcus bought it for Lily with his first paycheck from his own firm. I knew that. I did it anyway. I wanted you to know. I remembered that I know what I destroyed." After Catherine left, Victoria sat in silence for a long time. Sarah brought tea, set it down without speaking, and left her alone. The anger was still there, it would always be there. Some wounds cut too deep to fully heal. But Victoria realized she didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted peace. That evening, she told Lily about Catherine's visit. Age-appropriate version. "Is grandmother Catherine going to die?" Lily asked. Her 8-year-old face serious. "Yes, baby. She's very sick. Should we visit her? Like how we visited great Uncle Sandro, even though we didn't know him well. Out of the mouths of babes. Would you want to visit her? Lily thought about it carefully. She was mean to us, but Daddy loved her. Maybe we could visit her for Daddy. Victoria pulled her daughter close, breathing in her shampoo and innocence. You're wiser than I am. You know that? They visited Catherine twice in the hospital before she died. Short visits, carefully controlled, with Victoria watching like a hawk for any cruelty. But Catherine was different in those final weeks. Humbled by mortality, genuine in her remorse, if too late. The last thing Catherine said to Victoria was, "Take care of her. Take care of Marcus's little girl. Do better than I did." "I already am," Victoria said quietly. Not cruel, just honest. Catherine died on a Tuesday morning. Victoria attended the funeral small, poorly attended, a stark contrast to the social spectacles the Ashfords used to command. Richard was there, looking lost without his wife to direct him. A handful of distant relatives who barely knew the family. At the graveside, Richard approached Victoria. "Thank you for coming, and for bringing Lily." Catherine died, knowing Marcus's daughter was safe. That meant something to her. "I didn't do it for her," Victoria said. "I did it because Lily asked to come. Because my daughter has more compassion at 8 than some people learn in a lifetime. She gets that from you." Victoria didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to Richard Ashford. A year after learning about her inheritance, Victoria stood in the Santos Foundation's expanded offices, preparing for their first annual gala. The foundation had grown beyond her wildest dreams, serving hundreds of families, providing housing, education, legal services, everything she'd once needed and never had. Lily, now 9, was helping by arranging flowers with the event coordinator. She wore a blue dress, new, purchased from a real store, not a thrift shop, and looked every inch her father's daughter. Smart, kind, seeing the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. "Mommy," Lily called. "Look, we made centerpieces for every table." Victoria crossed to admire her daughter's work. Simple arrangements, beautiful in their lack of pretension. Their perfect baby. Eleanor arrived early, as always, checking details with meticulous precision. "The guest list is extraordinary," she said. "We have philanthropists, business leaders, 3 council members, and—" she paused dramatically. "The mayor." "The mayor?" Victoria blinked. "Your foundation has become the model for supporting single mothers in crisis. Everyone wants to be associated with it." David Chen arrived next, grinning. "Have you seen the press list? The Times, the Post, 3 magazines, and CNN wants to interview you about turning tragedy into triumph." Victoria felt her stomach clench. "I don't want to be the story. The families we help should be the story." "Then tell their stories," David said simply. "Use your platform to amplify voices that usually get ignored. That's power, Victoria. Real power." The gala was more successful than Victoria had dared hope. She told the foundation's story, not her rags to riches tale, but the stories of the mothers they'd housed, the children they'd supported, the lives they'd transformed. She introduced Maria, a single mother who'd been living in a shelter and now had an apartment and a job as the foundation's outreach coordinator. She spotlighted Jasmine, whose children had been in foster care until the foundation helped her get stable housing and legal support to reunite her family. She made it clear, the Santos Foundation wasn't charity, it was justice. The donations poured in. By the end of the night, they'd raised $12 million, enough to expand into 3 more cities, enough to help hundreds more families. As the last guests trickled out, Victoria found Lily asleep on a couch in the office, still wearing her blue dress, a napkin clutched in her hand with Santos Foundation, written in crayon. She was handing those out earlier. Sarah, the office manager, explained with a smile. Told everyone the foundation was named after her great-great-uncle, who was a hero. Victoria carefully picked up her daughter, carrying her toward the elevator. Eleanor and David followed, both smiling at the picture they made. "You've built something remarkable," Eleanor said, as they rode up to the 61st floor. Alessandro would be so proud. The penthouse was quiet when they entered, filled with shadows and city lights. Victoria carried Lily to her bedroom, the one decorated with all the toys Uncle Sandro had bought, but never given, and tucked her in. "Love you, Mommy," Lily murmured sleepily. "Love you too, baby. More than all the money in the world." After Lily was asleep, Victoria stood at the bows, floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city 61 stories below. Somewhere down there, families were struggling, like she'd struggled. Children were going to bed hungry like Lily had been hungry. Mothers were making impossible choices between rent and medicine, food and school supplies. But now, because of Uncle Sandro's love and his careful planning, Victoria could help. Not all of them the need was infinite, but some, the ones in front of her, the ones who came through the foundation's doors, looking for hope. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Miss Chen, I saw your story on the news. I'm a single mother living in my car with my daughter. Can the Santos Foundation help us?" Victoria's throat tightened. 2 years ago, that had been her living in a car, desperate, certain she was out of options. She typed back, "Yes. Come to our offices Monday morning, 9 a.m. Bring your daughter. We'll help you find housing, connect you with services, and get you back on your feet. You're not alone anymore." The response came immediately. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." But Victoria did know. She knew exactly what it meant to be seen when everyone else looked through you, to be helped when everyone else dismissed you, to be told you mattered when everyone else said you were nothing. She crossed to Uncle Sandro's study, where his portrait hung above the fireplace. In the painting, he was smiling, raising a glass in a toast. The artist had captured something in his eyes, kindness, mixed with determination, love, tempered by loss. "Thank you," Victoria whispered to the portrait, "for seeing me, for planning this, for giving me wings." The city lights glittered beyond the windows, each one a story, a life, a possibility, and Victoria Chen, heir to a fortune she'd never expected, stood in the home she'd been given and made a promise to herself, to Lily, to every struggling mother who'd ever been told she was worth nothing. She would use her wings, not just to fly, but to lift others, not just to escape, but to transform, not just to survive, but to thrive and help others thrive with her. Because, in the end, that's what inheritance really meant. Not just what you received, but what you did with it. Not just your own transformation, but how many others you transformed along the way. The penthouse was quiet. Lily slept peacefully in her room. The foundation's offices below hummed with the promise of tomorrow. And 61 stories above Manhattan, a woman who'd once been dismissed as nothing stood surrounded by everything that mattered. Family, purpose, hope, home. Catherine had been wrong about so many things, but she'd been right about one. Victoria had won, just not the way Catherine thought. Victoria hadn't won by getting money or property or revenge. She'd won by never letting cruelty make her cruel, by never letting suffering make her indifferent to others' suffering, by never letting the lies about her worth become her truth. She'd won by staying herself, even when the world tried to make her small. And now, with Uncle Sandro's gift, she could help others do the same. The city sparkled below. Somewhere in those streets, another single mother was struggling. Another child was going to bed hungry. Another family was one disaster away from losing everything. But tomorrow, some of them would find the Santos Foundation, would walk through doors Victoria had opened, would receive help Victoria had made possible, would hear the message Victoria knew by heart now. You are worth more than your worst circumstances. You deserve more than survival. You are seen. You are valued. You matter. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, the universe sends you an uncle who watched from the shadows, a lawyer who searched for 6 months, and a safe full of secrets that changes everything. Not because you're special, but because someone saw that you always were. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of gratitude and responsibility settle on her shoulders like a mantle. Then she opened them and looked at the city below with new determination. Tomorrow, she'd help the mother who'd texted. Next week, she'd open the foundation's second location. Next month, she'd expand into 2 more cities. Next year, who knew? The work would never be finished. The need would never be fully met. But that was okay, because Victoria Chen had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't have to save everyone. You just have to save the ones in front of you. One family at a time. One mother at a time. One child at a time. And somewhere, she was certain, Uncle Sandro was raising that glass in her honor, proud of the woman who'd taken his gift and turned it into something even more valuable than money. She'd turned it into hope. 5 years had passed since that November morning when Victoria Chen discovered she owned not just a penthouse, but a legacy. 5 years of transformation so profound that sometimes she had to remind herself it was real. The Santos Foundation had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. What started as a single office in Manhattan had expanded to 12 cities across the country. They'd housed over 3,000 families, provided legal services to 5,000 more, and created a network of support that caught people before they fell through the cracks. But it was a Tuesday morning in spring when Victoria's past and present collided in a way she never expected. She was in her office reviewing grant applications when Sarah knocked on the door, her expression uncertain. "There's a woman here to see you. She says she's family, but she's not on the schedule." Victoria's chest tightened. Family. That word still carried complicated weight. "What's her name?" "Diana Ashford." Victoria's pen froze mid-signature. Diana, Marcus's younger sister, the one who'd been away at college in London when Marcus died, the one who'd sent exactly 2 cards in 5 years, one for Marcus's funeral, one when Lily was born, and then disappeared into her European life. Send her in. The woman who entered looked like Catherine but softer somehow. Same silver blonde hair, same elegant bones, but her eyes held something Catherine's never had: uncertainty, maybe even shame. "Victoria," Diana said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either." Victoria gestured to a chair. "You're a long way from London." Diana sat, clutching an expensive purse like it might protect her. "I came back last month, moved to Boston. My marriage ended, and I realized I'd been running away from more than just America." She paused. "I saw the foundation's story in the Times, saw what you've built, what you've become, what I've always been." Victoria corrected gently. "Your family just couldn't see it." "I know," Diana's voice cracked. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I was 22 when Marcus died. I ran away to school and never came back. I told myself it was because of my studies, my life in Europe. But the truth is, I was a coward. I knew how they treated you. I knew, and I did nothing." Victoria studied her sister-in-law, former sister-in-law, technically. The marriage that connected them had ended with Marcus's death. "Why are you here now?" "Because I have a daughter." Diana pulled out her phone, showing a photo of a little girl about Lily's age. "Her name is Emma. She's 13 now, and last month she asked me why she'd never met her cousin Lily, why I never talked about Uncle Marcus, why we didn't have any family except her father's side." Diana's hands shook as she set down the phone. I realized I was doing to Emma what my parents did to Marcus, cutting her off from people who could love her because of my own shame and fear. I don't want to be them, Victoria. I don't want my daughter to grow up thinking that money and status matter more than family. Where is she? Emma. At my hotel. I didn't want to presume. Diana stopped. I don't deserve to ask this, but would you consider letting Lily meet her? Just once? I know you have every right to say no after what we did to you, but Emma deserves to know her cousin. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, thinking of Lily, at 13, confident, compassionate, thriving in ways Victoria had once thought impossible. Lily, who still asked questions about her father, who treasured every story, every photograph, every connection to Marcus. Lily deserves to know her aunt too, Victoria said finally. If you're serious about this, if you're really here to build bridges, instead of burning them. I am, Diana said quickly. I swear I am. I know I can't undo the past. Can't make up for not being there when you needed me. But I want to try. If you'll let me. Victoria pulled out her phone and sent a text. 20 minutes later, Lily walked into the office, tall and poised in her Whitmore Academy uniform. She stopped when she saw Diana, her eyes, Marcus's eyes taking in every detail. Lily, Victoria said, this is your Aunt Diana, your father's sister. Lily studied Diana, with that direct gaze that made adults uncomfortable. The one who lives in London? Boston now, Diana said, her voice wavering. I brought photos of your dad when he was young, if you'd like to see them. Lily looked at Victoria, who nodded. I'd like that, Lily said carefully. Mom doesn't have many pictures from before. They spent the next hour looking through Diana's photo albums. Marcus, as a baby, as a child, as a teenager. Diana told stories their parents had never shared. Marcus building elaborate Lego cities. Marcus defending smaller kids from bullies. Marcus drawing architectural plans on every surface, including his bedroom walls. He was kind, Diana said, tears streaming down her face. Even when our parents tried to make him hard, he stayed soft. When I was little and had nightmares, he'd let me sleep on his Nephilim floor. When I got bullied at school, he taught me how to stand up for myself. He was the best of us, and they never saw it. Lily listened intently, absorbing every word. Mom says I'm like him, that I have his heart. You do, Diana whispered. God, you really do. When it was time for Lily to return to school, Diana stood to leave as well. Thank you, she said to Victoria, for this, for giving me a chance I don't deserve. Diana, Victoria said, would you and Emma like to come to dinner? Saturday night. At the Penthouse. Nothing formal, just family. Diana's composure finally shattered completely. Family. You're Marcus's sister. That makes you family. What your parents did doesn't change that. The question is whether you want to be family going forward. Yes, Diana said immediately. God, yes, more than anything. Saturday dinner started awkward, but ended with Emma and Lily bent over sketch pads. Emma, teaching Lily architectural drawing techniques she'd learned in European schools. Diana and Victoria talked late into the night about Marcus, about lost years, about second chances. I have money, Diana said at one point. Not like you do now, but enough. I'd like to donate to the foundation. Not to buy forgiveness, but because it's what Marcus would have done. He always saw the people others missed. He did, Victoria agreed. He saw me when I was nobody, just a waitress with big dreams and no path to reach them. You were never nobody, Diana said fiercely. My parents were just too blind to see it, too obsessed with pedigree and status to recognize real worth. Over the next months, Diana became a genuine part of their lives. She and Emma visited every weekend. They celebrated Lily's 14th birthday together. Diana shared stories of Marcus that Victoria had never heard, filling in the gaps of the man she'd loved but barely got to know. One evening, as they watched the girls laughing over some shared joke, Diana said quietly, "I need to tell you something about the day you were thrown out." Victoria tensed. "Diana, we don't need to." "I knew," Diana interrupted. "I was back in New York for a week, staying at a hotel because I couldn't face staying with mother and father. But I stopped by that morning to pick up some things I'd left. I heard the fight, heard everything mother said to you, saw her throw you out." Victoria's hands clenched. "And you did nothing." "I did nothing," Diana confirmed, her voice thick with shame. "I walked back out, got in my taxi, and flew back to London that afternoon. I told myself it wasn't my business, that you'd be fine, that mother would calm down and let you back. But the truth is, I was a coward. I chose my comfort over your safety, over Lily's safety. Why are you telling me this now? Because Emma asked me what kind of person I want to be, what kind of mother I want to be, and I realized I can't be better until I own what I did wrong." Diana turned to face Victoria fully. "I abandoned you when you needed help. I chose silence when I should have spoken up. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm so sorry." Victoria was quiet for a long time. The anger was still there, would always be there, layered beneath the new relationship they were building. But so was something else. Understanding, maybe, compassion for the scared 20-something who'd run from her family's cruelty rather than confronting it. "You're here now," Victoria said finally. "That matters. What you do going forward matters more than what you failed to do in the past." "I want to do better," Diana said. "I want Emma to know she has family who shows up, who stands up, who doesn't run away when things get hard." "Then do that," Victoria said simply. "Be that person." The Foundation's annual gala that year was the biggest yet. Victoria stood at the podium, looking out at over 500 attendees, donors, volunteers, families they'd helped, and press covering the event. "5 years ago," she began, "I was living in a car with my daughter. We had nothing, no home, no job prospects, no hope. I thought that was the end of our story, that we'd failed." She paused, finding Lily in the crowd. 14 now, brilliant and kind, sitting with Emma and Diana. But it was actually the beginning, because sometimes the worst moments crack us open to receive blessings we never imagined. Sometimes loss clears the way for discovery. Sometimes the people who try to break us accidentally break us open to become more than we ever thought possible. The room was silent, everyone hanging on her words. "The Santos Foundation exists because I was broken open, because I know what it's like to be dismissed, discarded, told, 'You're worth nothing.' And I know what it's like to discover you're worth everything, not because of money or status or inheritance, but because you're human, and every human deserves dignity." She shared numbers, families housed, children educated, mothers employed, lives transformed. But then, she did something different. She invited 3 women to the stage, women the foundation had helped, who were now thriving. Maria, who'd been living in a shelter and now managed a small business. Jasmine, who'd reunited with her children and just finished nursing school. And Carmen, who'd escaped domestic violence and now ran a legal clinic helping other survivors. These women didn't need saving, Victoria said. They needed support. They needed someone to believe in them. They needed what I needed 5 years ago, a chance to prove what they were always capable of. The applause was thunderous. Donations flooded in. By night's end, they'd raised $25 million, enough to expand to 10 more cities, enough to help thousands more families. As the crowd dispersed, Victoria found herself alone on the balcony, overlooking Central Park. The city sparkled below, each light a life, a story, a possibility. "Quite a view from up here." Diana joined her. 2 glasses of champagne in hand, both literally and figuratively. Uncle Sandro loved this view, Victoria said, accepting the glass. He'd stand here and tell me stories about the city, about the people he'd helped, about why wealth meant nothing if you didn't use it to make the world better. He sounds like Marcus, Diana observed. Like how Marcus would have been if he'd lived. Maybe that's why he loved me. Why he left me everything. He saw Marcus in me, saw the family Marcus chose. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Diana said, Emma asked if she could intern at the foundation next summer. Said she wants to learn how to use her privilege to help others. I told her I'd ask you. Victoria smiled. Tell her yes. Tell her the Santos Foundation always has room for people who want to do good. Thank you, Diana said. For everything. For forgiving me when you didn't have to. For letting Emma and me be part of your life. For showing us what family really means. Family isn't who you're born to, Victoria said. It's who shows up, who stays, who does the work to be worthy of the name. As the spring night deepened, Victoria Chen stood 61 stories above Manhattan, surrounded by everything she'd built from the ashes of her lowest moment. The foundation, the relationships, the purpose, the proof that worth isn't determined by those who try to diminish you, but by those who see your true value. The Ashfords had tried to break her. Instead, they'd freed her, tried to prove she was nothing. Instead, they'd pushed her toward discovering she was everything. And that, Victoria thought, was the sweetest victory of all, not revenge, but redemption. Not destruction, but creation. Not becoming what hurt you, but transforming pain into purpose. The city lights glittered with promise, and Victoria Chen, heir to a fortune but builder of a legacy, raised her glass to the night. To Uncle Sandro, who'd believed in her. To Marcus, who'd loved her. To Lily, who inspired her. And to every woman who'd ever been told she was worth nothing because they were wrong. Everyone is worth everything. Sometimes you just need someone to hand you the key to unlock it. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.